What is up, guys? It's Jimbo here, and welcome to another video. I am currently recovering from eating my entire body weight in food on Christmas Day. I'm sure you are as well, and I think just because 2023 is coming to an end, it's time to talk about my top 10 Game of the Year list, the games that I'm going to be putting up there, giving you my own personal Game of the Year so we can compare and discuss and all that good stuff. 2023 was a huge year for games, but unfortunately, it was an awful year for the games industry. Over 10,000 people lost their jobs this year. The people that make the games that we love and enjoy. Livelihoods ruined in favor of being able to, make profits in certain areas, and it just really sucks. Those are the real people, and I just wanted to acknowledge that before going into this video. Their work does not go unnoticed. Before we start though, I have a few ground rules. Number one, not every game on this list I have 100% completed or beaten in some capacity, because there's been a lot of very, very large games this year. Number two, my ranking is based off a combination of my own personal enjoyment of the game and gameplay and a lot of the different elements. My reasoning isn't 100% sound. That leads me into number three, which is this list is entirely just my feeling and how I feel everything. If you want to rank the games differently, if you think one game is better than the other, then feel free to do so in the comment section right now before you watch the rest of this video, or wait until the end of the video. Either way helps out the algorithm, so it helps out me. Let's get started. Honourable mentions are going to be a huge thing for me here because there's been so many games that I missed this year. Armored Core 6, Sea of Stars, I have Rogue Trader I've still got to play, a bunch of other updates for some games, and there's just so much stuff that came out that I wasn't able to play, like Lies of P. I could list off so many games. So here are a couple of honourable mentions for the list that didn't quite make it into the top 10. Let's talk about them. Atomic Heart is one of the first games that just missed out on the top 10. After watching back my review from earlier this year, my statement still feels the same from then as it does now. The gameplay and art direction of the game is wonderful, but it's sadly let down by the narrative and some of the dialogue that pulls you out of the game, and the ending that is just kind of happens, and then I know it's expanded upon a little bit in the DLC, but yeah, that's why it currently sits outside of my top 10. A more recent game just missing out on the top 10 spot is Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. After going through the game and the list of games that I have, unfortunately this missed out. The main reason for this was to do with the narrative and also the open world activities that I've mentioned here in my review. Whilst there wasn't anything bad or awful about the game that it was super glaring, it was unfortunately pushed out by others on the list. Coming in number 10 is Diablo 4. It ranks at this point purely because it hasn't had the best of post launches. But however, I thoroughly enjoyed the campaign and some of the seasonal content that they've done so far. It was my first jump back into an ARPG for a very, very long time. I love the build variety, the visual quality, and the pure satisfaction you got from mowing down hordes of enemies. It was just so fun, and it kept me playing for well over 150 hours. So if not more, I can't really track on the Blizzard app, but yeah. It doesn't rank any higher on this purely because it's a constantly updated game, so it could be higher or lower in the future, but as of launch, it sits firmly in number 10. Coming in at number 9, we are taking a trip back to the USS Ishimura with the Dead Space remake. There is one reason that this game is higher on the list than others, and that is purely because it's a remake, and I didn't feel like it was a fair choice to have this compared to some other games. It could 100% be way higher, even in my top 3 on a certain year, and I do feel like it is a little bit reductive saying that, especially for what it offers. There's so much I loved with this remake: the sound design, visuals, the updated approach to levels, having a Metroidvania style, and then the added things that they had in. They basically built this game from the ground up for the remake, and they're planning on doing more in the future. It's hard to rank these games as I love all of them for different things, but Dead Space sits in number 9. Number 8 is Jedi Survivor. Respawn has found the formula for this series and just expanded on it in many levels. Lightsaber combat is so good this time around. I absolutely adored it. The stances that they added was just a great addition on top of an already great system they had in Fallen Order, and it makes it that much better. A more open and expansive level design, as well as the narrative. However, it was slightly predictable in certain areas, but that's Star Wars for you. I'm a Star Wars fan, and I can see these things slot into place. References here and there are really nice, and certain characters and like callbacks and all that type of stuff. But the reason it ranks where it does is because during my playthrough and many other people's playthroughs, frame rate was a real issue, and performance issues with this at launch really hampered the experience, because this could have really been a lot higher on the list if it had been a lot better. And I feel like they'll probably add something in future, some DLCs or something, but they are going to probably make a third game of this. So if they can nail that, but the performance let it down, which is why it currently sits at number 8. This next game has moved in and out of the top 5, even in the top 3 at one point, but sitting down and truly being honest with myself led me to putting Starfield at number 7 on this list. Now, before you say this, yes, it's had a lot of performance issues. In my specific run, I only had like 2 bugs, and I rarely had that much performance issues. That was my main gripe with the game, but I have other things, so that's why it's sitting at number 7 for that, if we're comparing it to Jedi Survivor. But Starfield has so many redeeming qualities in terms of its scale and scope. Maybe you're a little bit too big at times. It's trying to achieve a lot of things, but has all of the hallmarks of Bethesda design, which kind of leaves it very flawed. There are still a lot of things that I really liked, and I would definitely like to revisit the game in the future after like some mods or updates to systems down the line. But honestly, what I've played, I did really enjoy. I have my gripes, but I don't think I would have spent as much time as I did in the game if I wasn't enjoying it. It sits at number 7 because after looking at the next few games, I moved its position, and just thinking about comparing it to those games is why it sits here. Where would you place Starfield? Remnant 2 is an utterly fantastic game for me that just misses out on my top 5. Essentially, it is Dark Souls with guns, and it had the biggest selling point of its boss design, the loops that you would go through, like the roguelike type elements and the Souls-like elements as well. Each boss has different mechanics, different levels of challenge, the gameplay, and you'll have so much gameplay here that you can go through with different playstyles and stuff, and that's why people love the Souls-like experience. It misses out because although I loved my time with the game, the other 5 games, I just like the gameplay experience a little bit more. I love grinding out bosses with the right amount of challenge, but I just don't think this game resonated with me as much as I wanted it to. Maybe a little replay will give me that feeling a little bit more. I know a lot of people love this, but sadly it sits at number 6. But hey, number 6 isn't that bad. It's ahead of Starfield and Jedi Survivor, at least on my list, so I suppose that's good. Yeah, let's jump into the top 5. Now entering the top 5 and taking that 5th spot is the wonderful Hi-Fi Rush. I can't talk enough about this game. It could have easily been my game of the year. The musical score, rhythm-based action gameplay, and most of all, this game just had so much style, and the art style as well. It just landed for me. And the craziest thing is that it shadow dropped at the end of January, and most people have probably forgotten that this game came out because it came out in January. We've had so many new stories and new games out. I recommend this game to anyone that they say they want just a shorter experience. I recommend this. The reason why this doesn't rank that little bit higher is the sheer quality of the other games. I think it does what it set out to achieve, and that is fantastic. And it's kind of sad in a sense, because it can be forgotten because of all these other games there, but in any other year this could easily be in the top 3 or even of one game of the year, similar to how It Takes Two won game of the year a few years ago. But for me, it sits at number 5. Swinging in at number 4 and just missing out on the top 3 is Spider-Man 2. After recently finishing the game, it's the most fresh I can talk about. The easiest thing to talk about with this game is just the overall feeling and the gameplay as a whole. It was great in 2018 and it's great here. Swinging and web gliding, the combat never gets really old. It's this beat 'em up brawler style, very similar to Arkham Asylum, and it's not too different, but it just adds just enough differences. For example, being able to do things with Miles and Peter, plus the Venom powers that you get throughout the game are awesome. Picking up and slamming enemies, massing AoEs, symbiote punches, different abilities and gadgets and all that stuff. It just feels really, really good. And it's hard to give a solid reason why it's only at number 4 on this list. The real reason is kind of down to an outside problem and not down to the game itself. It's like I've kind of seen this story before, or some version of it, which isn't really fair, but I almost predicted every story beat, maybe 1 or 2 variations here and there. And the thing is, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's really good. The voice acting's great, cinematics are great, and it doesn't really add that little sprinkle of extra that I was expecting it to, and that's why it doesn't go higher on this list compared to the other games. But it's still solid, and it could easily have won Game of the Year. It could be in the top 3, but just for me, it just misses out. Moving into the top 3, all of these games could have been Game of the Year, and they could have been number 1 on this list. They moved around quite a bit, but eventually I landed on a dead set top 3. But at number 3, unfortunately missing out on the runners-up place, we obviously got the second runners-up place, and that is going to be Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2 is a game that really needs to be played and experienced for yourself, because trying to condense this down into my own thoughts was really hard unless I did like a full video on it. The combat feels quite clunky in the beginning, but for some reason it works within the confines of this game specifically. In any other game, I don't think it works as well. I really struggled with it, but the thing that vastly outweighs this is what the game does in terms of narrative. Asking questions to answers that we get, and giving you answers to questions we haven't even asked yet. And the whole loops within loops type deal, and the way that the writing of Alan works with Saga, it's really interesting. And trying to explain a complex story such as Alan Wake 2 is really hard to do, so that's why I say you kind of have to play it yourself. But I will say that they have thrown in one of the best moments of the year for me when it comes to a specific game, and one of the best Fever Dream moments with the Herald of Darkness section. It's absolutely amazing. The song is really addictive, and I can't stop listening to it outside of actually playing the game. But Alan Wake 2 has not only a wonderful visual direction, and the direction in the way that the narrative goes in the game, I absolutely love, and I've not seen this before, and it made me think a hell of a lot more, which is why it ranks on the list a lot higher than any of the other games. It wasn't my favorite game of the year overall, but it really surprised me how much Remedy is pushing the boundaries on what we consider storytelling. I also loved seeing the wonderfully smug bastard that is Sam Lake as Casey throughout the game. What he is doing with the team at Remedy is absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to see what their next step is with the DLCs and with what other games they plan on bringing out in the future. So of course, we need to pick a number 1 and number 2. The separation between these games is very, very close. The difference is one specific reason, which I'll go into in just a moment when we talk about that specific game. On one hand, we have an RPG masterpiece from Larian with Baldur's Gate 3, and on the other hand, we have the revitalization of Cyberpunk 2077 with CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. So let's talk about the number 2 game on this list and the reason why I put it there. So take it away, Jimbo. Baldur's Gate 3 isn't my game of the year for the sole reason I haven't completed the game yet. I was just moving into Act 3 when we had the bombardment of all of the other massive games releasing. Yes, I know that it is a very bullshit reason. It doesn't feel that great to kind of not put it at number 1, but I felt in my own reasoning that I couldn't put it as number 1 until I'd actually finished it. That being said, I've still clocked 70 hours with the game. I could easily get another 40 to 50 hours. I might even start a brand new playthrough with a friend on co-op. But every single aspect of this game is wonderful. The options and the player freedom that you get within the sandbox of D&D is just amazing. It's my first proper CRPG, and I love the turn-based combat system, which I have really enjoyed in a lot of games more recently. And it was my first foray into the D&D world properly as well. The ability to find solutions to any situation in the game is just so amazing that the developers can think about that. I can recount my own personal playthrough and specific things as well, as has every one of my friends that's told me about the game and all of the situations they in, and not a lot of them are very, very similar. Maybe some characters are the same, but the way they approach situations, way different. This is a love letter to D&D in so many ways, and Larian have pushed the quality bar to a whole new level. It does sit number 2, as I've said, because I've not beaten the game. I had it at number 1 for a while, and I had a lot of time to compare it to some other games on the list, and how I felt about Cyberpunk over this game. I think it's simply down to I love sci-fi futuristic games more than the fantasy genre, and the fact that I haven't beat the game. But I do not make this choice super easily. It is definitely one game of the year in so many categories, and they deserve it. For me, I have chosen to go with Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty to be more specific, as my game of the year. So let's talk about it. I know you might be thinking this, why have you picked the DLC to be the number 1 spot on there? And let me give you a bit of context for everything. I jumped into Cyberpunk 2077 at launch. Didn't have a great experience purely because it was just a very much unfinished game, and I wanted to see it at an updated standard and actually see what CD Projekt Red were going to do. And Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty felt like that crescendo of all of the updates that they did. I actually jumped into the 2.0 update a few days before, and that is what really made me fall in love with this game. Played a whole bunch of hours, jumped into the Phantom Liberty DLC, finished that, and then finished my first playthrough of 2077, and I was in love. So I'm going to let myself talk about why a little bit more here. So Jimbo, take it away. Cyberpunk 2077 is just one of those games that is visually super stunning. Playing this on a PC, really pushing the hardware of the ray tracing and the way that it looked graphically was sensational. And just being in the world of the game, now that it had all of its updates to the crowd and the police and the big overhauls in 2.0, was way different to how it felt when I played at launch for that little period. And I even put maybe 10, 12 hours into the game before I kind of dropped it way back when. And this one, I put well over 80 to 90 hours, I think, into the game. And I loved every moment of it. I loved the story and the different messages that it sent within the Cyberpunk universe, and the narrative going through the whole relationship between Johnny and V. And then Phantom Liberty was just an escalation of that. The area that you got to go to, more hard choices that you can make, and then we can even talk about the combat. The combat was just so fun because you were able to change things on the fly when you had a certain amount of skill points. I even installed a mod that allowed me to completely respec all of my points to try out different things, and that's how I was able to do like build videos on the channel. And it honestly felt like a brand new game jumping in on the 27th, I think it was, of September this year. And I loved every single moment of it. I actually didn't really want to stop playing, but I had to move on to play some other games and obviously make other videos and such. And yeah, I think I will look back at this year and I will fondly remember like the return to form and what CDPR's team has done to fix this game and make it to the level that they wanted at launch. And I hope to hell that they make this happen in The Witcher 4 and they make sure that they don't repeat themselves with this. And then even the fact that Cyberpunk 2077 is supposed to get a sequel, or the Cyberpunk universe is supposed to get a sequel that they are working on as well, gets me very excited as well. I obviously know that this is going to be a bit of a hot take putting this as a number 1, but honestly, I loved every single one of the games on this list, even my honorable mentions. And there's some games that I just didn't even get a chance to play, which I think would have been on this list. Sea of Stars, I think definitely would have been, and also Lies of P as well. But there you have it, guys. There is my top 10 games of 2023. I will be doing a video on my games that I'm most anticipated for 2024, so stay tuned for that. And we have another video going up over the weekend talking about where the channel is going and all that type of stuff. Tell me your top 10 game list down in the comment section. If you played 10 games or games that you played in 2023, if it is a singular game, you don't even have to tell me anything. Just leave something down in the comment section. It really helps out. And also hit that subscribe button if you are new here. And as always, this has been It's Jimbo, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.